George Miller is almost 80 years old. 80 years old, storming the wasteland, extending his saga, defining and redefining our idea of the post-apocalyptic in the way that George Romero defined the zombie film. I buckle up in my uncomfortable movie theater seat, and I'm reminded of the White Zombie song, Black Sunshine, where you hear the engine growl, where Iggy Pop's voice comes in on the intro, gripping the wheel. His knuckles went white with desire. The wheels of his Mustang exploding on the highway like a slug from a 45. True death. 400 horsepower of maximum performance, piercing the night. This is Black Sunshine. I hear the song in my heart. I feel the riff. I feel the rattle. And the inspiration goes all the way back to fucking Faster Pussycat Kill Kill and Death Race 2000 and other violent car culture films. But Miller takes it further out into the end of the world with Mad Max, with The Road Warrior, with Beyond Thunderdome, with Fury Road, and at almost 80 goddamn years old, with this film, making me recall a song, and with maybe a wasteland on the way, I buckle up in my uncomfortable movie theater seat, inside the war rig of my cinephile mind, and I encourage you to buckle up with us too, because tonight, we may not find the green place. Tonight's Black Sunshine is George Miller's Furiosa.
The Mad Max films, 5 films at this point, over 50 years now, after almost a 50-year period now, has been, I think they've been groundbreaking in the possibilities of stunt work, obviously, car work, car stunts. And if they were only that, if they were just the spectacle of fast-moving vehicles crashing into each other and death almost always at hand, they would be a miracle of cinematic, violent cinematic pornography. Which I'm not saying in any kind of a bad way, but that's what it would be. The fact that Miller has imbued these stories with a sense of humanity, a hopefulness, a sense of who we are as a species, the tribalism that leads towards the victimization and marginalization of the classes, and the hero story that emerges first with Mel Gibson's Max character into Tom Hardy's taking over the role, the introduction of Charlize Theron's Furiosa, and now Anya Taylor-Joy's reimagining of that same younger character. I think this is one of the great world-building productions of cinema. I think this is an incredible, and I think that I might be wrong, and I might be at odds with a lot of people listening to this podcast, and you as well. I don't know. We haven't really talked about our initial impressions of this movie. I think that Furiosa might possibly be, and as with everything, this statement will need years in order to build its foundation and give support to it. But I think that Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, may be the best film in the series, and I'm really interested in this discussion, have been interested in this discussion since first watching this movie Sunday afternoon and taking it in. I will say this is the first time in years that I have been edge of my seat excited during a film, watching it emotionally and psychologically invested in the story that was being told and the images that I was seeing on the screen. I fell in love with this movie almost immediately. So I'm really looking forward to the next hour or so of this conversation. Please give me your take on this new George Miller epic.
I haven't had any. I saw it on Sunday, and I haven't had any time to go back and watch it. And all I can do is think about going back and watching it.
It's pretty rare that a film has that effect on you, right? That you want to go back, that you say, "Oh shit, I got to make time to see this in a theater. I got to see it again." Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't have fucking time. But I'm like, you know what I mean? And and I'm like, when can I go fucking see this? And it wasn't immediately, but it's a lot of times like if I go with Leslie to watch a movie, I come out or I'll go to the restroom and then like I get on my phone and I start like taking down all these notes, all these impressions, all these ideas, all these whatever. Because I don't want to lose. I mean, I know I'm going to lose all this shit, but I'm not going to. There's a certain amount that I want to capture. I want to catch, right? And then the first thing I wanted to do was and I didn't because I don't have time, but the next day or whatever it was like, okay, fucking press play on fucking Fury Road, because obviously this is a prequel, and our understanding here is fucking spoiler alert. Go see the goddamn film.
Yeah, if you're going to listen to this episode, I mean, with a prequel, you're not giving away I mean, there's going to be moments in the film that are going to be given away, and we're going to talk about the arm. We're going to talk about Immortan Joe. We're going to talk about the side stories and how she becomes who she is. I mean, it's all there. If you don't want that to be fucked up for you, go see the movie. Go see the movie, then listen to what we have to say. Because the truth of the matter is that nothing that we can say right now is going to equal the excitement that you're going to have in this movie. All you're going to be hearing is two assholes talk about how much they love the movie and how overwhelming it was for them, which may or may not rob you of that initial viewing experience. But that's on you. You got to make time you got to carve out the window, the 2.5 hour window, to see this movie and absorb it. And I'll say this much. You don't have to watch Fury Road I did not watch Fury Road again before going into this film. And subsequently, I was excited because as I was watching the movie, a bunch of shit started to hit me. Like there's a moment where she starts tattooing her arm as a map towards the green place. Yeah. And as I was sitting there, I was like, oh, fuck, she's going to lose that arm. I forgot that she was going to lose that fucking arm. Right. So now it's a build of like, how is she going to lose that fucking arm? And I think it's a beautiful and a spectacular way in which Miller realizes that. So, I mean, all of that being said, you can, and you can only make this choice once. You can rewatch Fury Road and prepare yourself for the excitement that this movie is going to be, or you can go into it with the jigsaw missing memory of what you remembered from that first Fury Road, or that second or third, or how many times you've watched Fury Road. You can go into it with that piecemeal memory of what that film was, and you're going to be blown. Hopefully, I was blown away. Hopefully, you will be blown away. But this between you and me and everybody listening right now, this is the best movie that I've seen this year, and it'll probably be the best movie that I see this year. I can't imagine a better movie watching experience than George Miller's new film.
I fucking went and my thing was like, I want to see Fury Road after this movie.
Yeah.
Because it just continues. She gets in the fucking war rig and she drives, and that's Fury Road.
Yeah.
So it leads up to the point that where Fury Road begins. It just plays right into it.
Well, that's the weird thing about it, and that's the chance that is taken in this kind of a film, in this film specifically, is that prequels are a very dangerous thing because you take the risk of giving away too much or paying off something slighter than what you as a viewer can imagine it's going to be. I was worried about the legend building. Was it going to live up to what Fury Road is? Because and watching Fury Road again, this was the chronology for me. 4:30. I went to the something like the 4:30 showing. I got out of work at like 2:30. I went to see Furiosa at like 3:30 or 4:30 or something like that. No. I had dinner with the family and then I went to see it at like 7 on the biggest screen that I could find. I saw it at 7. I was blown away. I came home. I asked my nephew if he wanted to see it. And he didn't know anything about it. He really wasn't. He's not a movie guy. So he's not a movie kid. So he's not me. So I showed him the preview. He said, yeah, he'd like to see it. So we planned on going yesterday, which would have been Wednesday. No, Tuesday, my last day of work. So in the interim, that Monday, we watched Fury Road. Because he had never seen it. He had seen The Road Warrior 2 years ago. I showed it to him. And we're going to get into this. I kind of feel like the Mad Max Saga is a complete world that George Miller with Mel Gibson and later Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, they created this world that exists, but it's two separate series of films. You have your Mad Max, you have your Mel Gibson Mad Max films, and you have these two films. And we're going to get into that during the conversation. But for me, they're two separate within the same world, if that makes any kind of sense. And I'll try to explain it anyway. We watched Fury Road, and I was really shocked after seeing Furiosa how small Fury Road was, narratively wise. I mean, it is a straightforward action road film. It's the sparest of plot.
It's a chase.
It's a chase film, yeah.
Get to the deer and avoid them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it was like when I first saw it, I remember being knocked out of. I might have seen it with you. We might have seen it together. It was epic. It was incredible, and it was the type of film where you just sat there going, constantly oohing and ahhing at the amazement of what you're seeing on screen, knowing that so much of the film was practical. Like those stunts are being done on screen with minimal CGI. Sadly, that's not the case with Furiosa. There's a great deal more CGI in this film, but I don't think it's. I still think it's in keeping with the spirit and the complexity.
Uses it as a tool, not as a crutch.
Yeah, he does. He accentuates what you see on screen with CGI rather than creating entire images based solely on CGI. So, that being said, the danger was the story was going to be overwhelming and disappointing. Like they were going to try to stuff too much story into something that Fury Road did so beautifully in a minimalist handling of the material. But with Furiosa, I really did feel like everything was a part of a whole, that everything was a necessary part of a whole. So this world that he creates is both beautiful, frightening, and incredibly intimidating. And, me being the pessimistic, cynical bastard that I am, I view both Fury Road, Furiosa, and the original Mad Max films as, whether right or wrong, something that we're going to have to contend with at a certain point. With global warming, and this is where anybody who's on the far right is going to, but I don't know if anybody who's on the far right is going to even listen to us in the first place, given our politics. I can't help but imagine that this is the future that stands before us. Pollution, water rights, and gasoline consumption. I don't know if we're going to manifest. I don't know if humanity is going to become what you see in these films, but it wouldn't surprise me if it does. That's the thing about these films, is that I think they imagine and realize a very real possible future based on where we come from and man's propensity for self-destruction, as well as our inability to actually care for one another. The level of tribalism that you see with Immortan Joe, and what's Hemsworth's name? Dementus. That's right. I want to say Dementor, Dementus. I don't think. The only thing that's far off in this movie is the level of stunt work. And that's just exaggerated for entertainment purpose. But I don't think that there's anything in this film that is particularly far off of what we are capable of as a species. This shit is almost a documentary to me. I don't.
Well, it kind of goes to the line that's supposedly attributed to Einstein. Mm-hmm. Where he says World War IV, where he said supposedly, no, it's not for sure, but he's supposed to have said, according to this legend, right, is that he said World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'll say it one more time. World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Mm-hmm. That's some heavy shit.
It is. It is. And what you see on that screen is exactly that. You see the built human beings by nature and by necessity have a need to establish government, whether a just or a predatory government. There is the need to develop some kind of structure. Now, when the leaders involved are greedy, opportunistic, and uncaring, what you see is what you get is what you see in this picture. And I don't think that's too far off of the possibilities that we face. I think the difference in what we see on screen versus what we experience in the reality of our lives. And you can say whatever the fuck you want to say about first world problems and the comfort of being able to discuss this from somebody who's living in a house, who's living in a home, with air conditioning and on
an iPhone, fucking doing a podcast about cinema.
Exactly, all of that. But
as a fucking cisgendered white male.
Yeah. All of that bullshit that I've been labeled, that has been thrown on me over the last 10 years or so. But the truth of it is that when you watch Fury Road and you watch Furiosa, I don't think these are too far off from the leaders of this country that you see taking advantage of their power, but also manipulating the public in such a way as to manipulate the mindset of the culture. preying
Yeah.
on tribalism, preying on class differences.
Yeah, I mean, the Proud Boys become the War Boys. The Morton Trump, you know?
I knew that
see
eventually we would get to that,
From the group of brides, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, his sons fucking urging him to wage war.
There's going to be a lot of people that are going to turn off at this point because they're going to be like, come on. But
no,
it's
turn the
not just
volume
him.
louder,
Oh, yeah.
motherfuckers. You,
pay attention.
You thought it too.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the world building. My perspective on it is, it's kind of like a long route to fucking get to that fucking green place for me, as it usually is. But it's kind of like all of the politics and all of that stuff. It's coming post-apocalyptic, right? So they had to create this world of found objects, repurposed materials, specifically with cars, and gears and all that shit. So it's like existing cars, but customized, right? And cannibalized.
Yeah.
And using cars, because this leads to culture, because that's what we're talking. We're talking about politics, but we're also talking about culture. And cars in as a subgenre of film, and within this world, which is an elaborate world, that rivals. You know, when people think of world building, they think of like, I mean, now at this point that Game of Thrones has been adapted for the small screen, it's like, well, you think of a Game of Thrones, which is has a huge historical, all these underpinnings, all of these inspirations, all of this background in terms of like War of the Roses, etc. You think of fucking Star Wars, obviously. You think of like different sagas. This rivals all of those. It's more gritty, and it maybe there isn't as much detail that we're made aware of, but George Miller created all of this detail just so that it would have a background, even if we don't know about it. So for the car culture that all this is founded on, and this is still leading up to what you're talking about in terms of the politics and the hierarchy and all that. It's like, this is a culture of, when everything is stripped away, it's a culture of like, what can you do? At this point, you have to interact with your environment manually. There's the history man knows all this shit just to preserve. And there are those people who actually do believe that, yeah, that's one thing is Dementus carries him around, because he's kind of like, he believes at least that there should be this idea of like knowledge and the continuation of culture. But other than that, it's like, well, what use are you? What can you do? How can you survive, right? Cars are fetish objects. They're objects of power. They're sources of power. They're characters in the film. They each have names, personalities, looks. The shit that they did with the cars in this fucking film is ridiculous.
It's amazing, it really is.
And the Interceptor, right? That's iconic. Mad Max 2. It's that Falcon, the Black Ford Falcon. The fucking Giga Horse, that Immortan Joe, that's his car. It's two Cadillacs fucking stacked. Like, it's crazy. The production designer said something along the lines of, in a world where there's barely one of anything, to show that you have true power, Immortan Joe's the man who's got two of everything. So it's this ostentatiousness. This goes back to like the Trump kind of metaphors. Like, I'm gonna fucking show you. And so at that point, for others, it's not like, oh, we're the have-nots and this is the have. It becomes almost this show of like, well, this is his dominance, this is his power. He has those things because he deserves those things. He has those things because he's strong. If I can position myself closer to him, then I'll get closer to that. I'll get closer to the water that he's going to give us. Maybe I can get some of this. The war rig from Fury Road and Furiosa. It's a modified big rig that she drives, and first Praetorian Jack, her mentor, drives. Dementus's motorcycle chariot. I mean, that's pretty obvious how it goes back to ancient times. Instead of like bones and stones and wood, the material, it's metal, it's chrome. Everything's jerry-rigged, it's customized, it's weaponized. And it's beautiful in its ugliness. And it reminds me of Burning Man. I don't know how much you know about Burning Man.
You know, I'm very dismissive of that type of shit. So please enlighten me, because to me, it's just a bunch of drug addicted, alcoholic white people in the desert dancing around. It's just fucked up. It's not my kind of thing.
I mean, that's
it.
Basically, so that's the
gist of it.
Of civilization itself. Burning Man started. It arose out of like the late 70s, early 80s, San Francisco.
I didn't know it had been around that long. Wow.
Yeah, those are the origins. Bohemian trickster culture of the Cacophony Society.
Yeah.
And the Cacophony Society also has an influence on Fight Club. So this guy named Larry Harvey, he invited some of his friends to create this wooden effigy, this wooden man, and burn that man on the beach. So that's what they did. Then eventually it was like, hey assholes, you can't burn this shit on the fucking beach. So slowly it morphed into something that they would go and it's like, let's say you and I invite all of our fucking listeners and we're going to go to the fucking desert, and we're going to, the climax of this gathering is going to be that we're going to burn. Let's say for us, it would be, we would make this giant TV and we would burn it. And whatever that means, and slowly it would develop into its own mythology. But there would be no money. It would be anarchic because there's no really like, it's not really like leadership. It's just this gathering, and it's all understood that we're like among equals here. It would be an ethos of self-reliance, of making things, of self-expression, like radical self-expression. So like, I don't give a fuck how you show up. Just show up as yourself. Of bartering. So if you need something, I can help you with that. If I need something, and we're not going to exchange money. Of building, and it's all in the desert. But of course, what happened? It got fucking crazy. Because there was no like there was an ethos, there were kind of like these ideals, but there were no real boundaries. So
There's
even
no
people
structure.
fucking trying to, there was no structure. So even people trying to get there, driving through the desert, they were like, I don't know where the fuck it is.
And the desert is a big place, so don't
and I don't
mistake
know
that.
the limits, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the limits. And so then people started showing up with guns, because this is the United States, right? So they started firing them into the mesa, across the mesa. So it's like, this isn't a good idea because you might fucking hit someone. You didn't think of that, did you? No, I didn't. There was an accidental death. There's like sandstorms type of shit. If you don't have established boundaries, you can run someone over. You can crash into a tent and kill someone. That happened. So then there were arguments like the fucking founding fathers, like in a teepee, in a fucking giant tent, there's going to be arguments, right? We need to do something about this where we balance out freedom with structure. So they built on top of that ethos, and I'm going somewhere. I'm taking long, but I'm getting there. They started to develop more and more. Okay, maybe don't fucking be an asshole. Maybe that's one of the ethical markers. What does that mean? That means fucking the golden rule, right? That means don't do stupid shit that will get someone hurt because you don't want to get hurt. So you start to, in a sense, they're rejected a society. So if you reject a society, or if your society collapses like in Mad Max, you have to start remaking an alternate one. And how does that manifest itself? In history, it manifests, we all started out in these societies that were very tribal and had a different concept. They were nomadic, shamanistic, connected to the environment, in a way that to us nowadays looks fucking quaint, or it looks like it's before society, supposedly, right? Before civilization.
Yeah.
When we think of it from this like Western perspective. Then you get fucking agriculture, you get hierarchical religion, you get all this stuff. And then at that point you have fucking, like it starts off with warlord shit, and it's like, well, this is going to be the city. These are the boundaries of the city. We're going to expand the city. This is where we farm. This is my fucking grain. This is my land. This is fucking my this. This is my that. And so you get these two forms of society, like a tribal, pagan, in some ways matriarchal form, and a hierarchical, warlord, patriarchal form. And you see that with these warlords of the Mad Max, especially of Furiosa. I mean, even going back to what's his name, the one that had that like Friday the 13th Jason, that like hockey mask.
From God, in the Road Warrior.
In the Road Warrior,
I can't remember the name of that character.
It's on the tip of my tongue. Yeah. But these like Dementus and these like centers of power, based on resources, the Bullet Farm, Gastown, the Citadel. These are not like, this is fucking old shit. It's just reverting to that. And then you get religious ideologies revolving around it. And then these like, cults and these practices, that all these like suicide fucking cult around the leader, and the mythology of like, we're gonna die for this and we're gonna go somewhere, and these alternative ways of looking at their world. That's why it reminds me of it reminds me of Burning Man, because, and on Burning Man, in some level, like, people say that it lost its purity because now you have these CEOs, these like Silicon Valley CEOs that go, and you're not supposed to fucking like, I mean, you pay to go, but you're not supposed to like use money there to buy shit, because it's supposed to be this alternative economy. But when you have like Mark Zuckerberg and his staff, it's kind of like, it's not self-reliant when you have like basically your staff doing all this shit for you, your servants basically. But that's what it can develop into. You start to get these little fiefdoms, or fiefdoms, and then that can expand, and that's what happens in the film. And it's all, the expression of it is in cars, the expression of it is in guns. And it's crazy because it's like, a lot of this comes from Australian car culture, but they don't have like the same like fetish of guns the way we do here. So it's crazy how American I saw this this little video that Vanity Fair put together where they're talking to George Miller, and he has this cool backdrop. He's at a table with all these like a skull and like some like pipes or whatever, and he's talking about they made this like scrapbook, really cool, with cutouts, printouts, and stuff. And he's looking through it, and he's admiring it. He's just like, "Oh, this is cool!" Like, "Oh shit!" And he sees, and it shows like the trajectory of influences going from like Buster Keaton in The General, or it's about this train. We talked about it when we were doing like the greatest films of the
20s
of the decades. Yeah, and this particular film was from the 20s. To Ben-Hur, to Once Upon a Time in the West, Lawrence of Arabia. These like films about travel, movement, vehicles, war, The Expanse. He talks about how on an archetypal level, when different cultural audiences would look at the film, how they would project their own mythos onto it. So he describes like in Japan, they said this is like a Mad Max is a samurai. And he says that in France, that they said, well, this is just another form of the Western, the American Western. So this is a cowboy on wheels instead of a horse. And so we're talking about, and I'm just ranting and throwing all this stuff into the pot of ideas here, or into the fire, as I typically do, sometimes without any fucking point. But it is what it is. I'm just spinning my fucking metaphorical wheels here. We're talking about, making fun of Trump and all this shit, and saying that he can fit in with this, but it's like, obviously he fucking can. And for Americans, and not everyone who listens to this show is American. Most of our downloads do come from the United States. Maybe it's through VPN, I don't know. But I'm curious to know how non-Americans view this, because as Americans, it's a very American, like, even though it's Australian in origin, it's the fucking cars, the guns, the fucking oil. I mean, this might as well be fucking Texas. Fucking guns, cars, and oil. You know what I mean? Like trucks and shit like that. And everything's big. It's very interesting. But it shows that dichotomy between the green place, especially how it leads into Fury Road, this kind of matriarchal group, and it comes from that too, because that's where she gets stolen from when she's kidnapped, because it shows how she becomes. She has to hide a seed. She has to hide the fact that she's female. She has to. It's like the Nietzsche line, harden thyself. She has to get tough. Or like, either Nietzsche or Johnny Cash, or through Shel Silverstein through Johnny Cash, I knew you'd have to get tough or die. Because once they figure, in the beginning when it's like, oh, you're a girl, like, ooh, the pedophile fucking son of Immortan Joe is all about it, So she has to fucking pretend to be this boy. And then the way they use Anya Taylor-Joy's appearance, I think she's great. I think her look is used like for maximum effect. Her doe eyes, her long face. I think she's making interesting choices with her career. And the way they use her and like, there are moments when it's like using it's androgynous because she's supposed to be this, but then they keep the hair where it's like, well, she could have just cut her hair to hide it, but she like wraps it. She wears a beanie basically. And then there's this like reveal, not to us, but to another character where he's like, whoa. And now it's like, well, she's fucking now a young woman because she lost her identity as a girl in the same way that in this battle between, or in this like dialectic between the green place being that tribal, matrilineal, matriarchal kind of like culture, and the wasteland and its centers of power being patriarchal, very like in that sense capitalistic, hierarchical, all of that, sky god kind of related. She lost her aspect as being a girl, so she had to basically pretend to be a boy to survive. And then now she's kind of like, in this Jungian fucking sense, she's still tough as fuck, but now she can let her hair down until later she cuts it again. It's an interesting balance using her as kind of like that, the face of that, of this tug between extremes. If any of that fucking makes sense, because I'm going from one thing into another. Because this film lends itself to sermons, you know,
well,
sermons on the fucking hood of a car.
I think a lot of films don't have. I think a lot of directors don't have the capabilities that George Miller displays in this film. I mean, this is, as far as I'm concerned, the best of the Mad Max films, which makes it one of the best films I've ever seen. I think arguably one of the best films ever made, because, and only time will tell if that, if it will grow in that, if it will grow or diminish in that regard. But I have a feeling it's going to grow in that regard, because it's going to be number one, it's a film that tackles real life subject matters, very difficult elements of humanity, and it does so in an unapologetic way. It doesn't go out of its way to demonize in an unrealistic manner. Immortan Joe is horrible, and Dementus is horrible, but they're not cartoonish, which is strange given the getup, the outfits, but within the context of the world that is being created, it is very much in keeping in what this in the images that you see. Nothing here is over the top. I don't think it is. Even Dementus in that fucking three bike chariot that he has, I saw that and I laughed my ass off, because I thought, wow, they're really going for something with that. That could have been laughable, but it wasn't. It was very.
It makes sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense,
because it's like, if we think of society,
mm-hmm.
the society that we live in, it's like, well, for the most part, we're all kind of like, there are people who will stand out who are extreme, and then there are the people that, for the most part, are like middle of the road and just kind of basically trying to fit in, right? Then imagine over the course of however many years, through war, famine, climate change, all of these things like coinciding, civilization fucking like deteriorates and collapses, right? And then now there's a rebuilding. Basically, everyone's going to start to try to fit in again, because they're going to try to fit in with whoever they can in order to survive, because we can't. It's very difficult to survive on your own, and especially like in that world, it's like, well, the people who are going to survive, it's like, what do you got? What do you have to offer? What can you do? Whatever that may be. So for some people, it's like they survive because of their body. Whether you're considered a blood bag, or you're a breeder, or
you're a war boy.
You know what I mean? Like the way that the Supreme Court views women, you know, or whatever. And so, or a cow, basically, because you just make milk. So then out of that, it's like it becomes like fucking it becomes like Burning Man. In the beginnings of Burning Man, I mean, I'm sure they just showed up however they fucking dressed. But then it becomes this thing where you start to develop ritual. You start to develop people are going to create an aesthetic. People are going to start to mark their sticks and their stones or their fucking guns or whatever. And they're like, well, we're the fucking watchers. This is our insignia. And then maybe you start to get tattooed, or this is to differentiate. The culture starts to develop a look, right? A look, a way of a language, a way of being. All subculture and all culture has that. And as that evolves, then you're going to have people who are even more fucking extreme of that. So it's like, well, if it's punk rock, Mohawk, all this and that. Punk rock, fucking Richard Hell in New York is like, my shirt is all fucked up. It's what am I going to use to keep the shirt together? I'm going to use fucking safety pins. Okay, well that goes to England. And now motherfuckers are putting safety pins through their cheeks. I mean, not now, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure still now, but at that point. So it's like, and the Mohawks and who has the biggest Mohawk? And so, of course, you're going to get these people who fucking like, they start to get crazier and crazier with their shit, where it's like, well, everybody rides a motorcycle. I want 2 motorcycles. I'm going to fucking make 2. But I'm going to make 3. And then the other guy's like, well, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to steal your 3 motorcycles. Now what? So it's crazy, but it's also like, it makes sense that it would have that sense of, it's like from the evolutionary psychology perspective, it's like, well, which fucking moose has the biggest antlers? And what does that mean to all the other moose? You know?
Meese. Yeah. What does it mean? I mean, it's the grandest. It's the stature. It's what you can do to convince. See, when I'm watching this film, and I got to tell you, it's like Immortan Joe, a great villain in the first film. That look, that hair, that mask, and that breathing apparatus. There was so much about it that was intimidating and frightening, but it was also the power of gathering people to follow you, which if you're realistic and honest about life, you'll realize that what you're seeing on screen is not far-fetched. It's not far off of what we are capable of as human beings. It's extreme, but when you see these war boys saying, he will carry me to the gates of Valhalla, he will carry me through, as insane as that might seem to rational thinking human beings, there are enough of us who, 3.5 years ago on January 16th can witness something that is akin to that. As extreme.
January 6th.
January 6th, that's what I said, right? January 16th, I said. Okay, January 6th. Yeah, where you do realize the power of the microphone. You do realize the power of standing in front of people and commanding them to do a thing that, by all sense, they would normally take a step back and say, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't think it's a far reach. Yeah. And this is throughout history. This is drinking the Kool-Aid, which is a term that a lot of people don't understand, but is a real thing that occurred in the 1970s. Jim Jones and David Koresh, all of these people who take on divine inspiration and convince others to follow them as a means of guidance, because people, what I've learned as I've gotten older is that it's very it's very easy to control people if you're willing to take advantage of their need to be guided, as if in their need to make sense of that which is nonsensical or hopeless. And if you're living in a world where there's no food, there's no water, and you're seeing death all around you, the possibilities of a charlatan being able to come along, a con man being able to come along and say, this is who we are now. It's very realistic. These are frightening movies as far as I'm concerned, because they're in keeping with what we are capable of as a culture. The idea that we can give in to something. Yeah, we can give in to something greater than us because it's easier than actually thinking for yourself. Those war boys scare the shit out of me because, ready to make war. What do they say in the first film? What's there's something that they chant constantly, and it's just almost like they might have.
Yeah, they talk about chrome, shiny and chrome.
Mm-hmm.
It takes on this life of its own. But I mean, as a person who studied religion, there's also another aspect, because it's like, I think it makes sense from an anthropological or sociological point, like the theory of human beings, religion. I think most people I think this is a conclusion that most people just come to when they think about religion, and they're like, well, it just helps people make sense of the world.
There is that aspect of it, but there's also a cultural aspect, which I hope you go into.
Well, so. Yeah, but the crazy thing about it too is that the more you look into this type of this phenomenon, the phenomenon of religion, is and I'm sure I've said this before. Mm-hmm. These explanations to make sense of the world are often they're not the simplest. It's not Occam's razor. It's not oh, well, it's because of this, and then everyone goes, yes, this makes me feel better. It's more creative. It's more fucking chaotic. It's more hobbled together. It's cultural, but it's also, there's a myth is not really. It's not as easy. In the first episode we did, and then it was I got caught up on it. It was did Marx say that that religion was the opiate of the people or the opiate of the masses? Does it really matter that how he's referring to them, right? The group, right? It's kind of it's more crazy than that, because it's when you think of, hold that thought, but now think of the world building of something like Game of Thrones and the religions that exist within the world of Game of Thrones. Some of those religions in that world have ideas of the prince that is or was promised or whatever, or the Zora High, these different figures that are going to come at the end of time. And sometimes, now mixing these two thought bubbles together is we have this view of the charlatan comes and convinces everyone to follow him. He convinces everyone that he is this messianic figure. But a lot of times it's not that simple. A lot of times it's actually easier for the charlatan, because it's not that the charlatan comes and convinces everyone. It's that everyone wants the charlatan to come. Whether he's the charlatan or they want someone to fulfill that role, because whatever is happening in the culture, I mean, sometimes it's because if we're looking at that, if we're looking at religion as a cultural phenomenon, not from the perspective of a believer, but from a perspective of someone who's studying religion, that's kind of the difference too between like when we think of like our modern day concept of a cult and a new religious movement. When we think of Jim Jones, it's like, oh, that's a cult. Like a sociology person or someone else will say it's a cult because these are the signs. You have a charismatic leader. He separates his followers from their families. He takes their money. They're totally dependent on him. These are the hallmarks, right?
And the women.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Everyone.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and
no, I mean the sexualization and young girls and all that shit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. He takes has all of the young girls become his brides and all this and that, right? Charlie Manson's girls, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's also, from a religious studies perspective, it's like there's the new religious movement where it's like a lot of times these things don't come up out of nothing. They're either offshoots of some other fucking offshoot of some other offshoot, or Waco is the Branch Davidians are Seventh-day Adventists offshoot. Like there's all this other shit, and it's kind of like this is something that's swirling anyway. What happens is that like a lot of the people who are the actual like charlatans, whether they believe themselves to be actual messianic figures or they're just cynically like con artists, they step into something that already exists. Steve Bannon, if Steve Bannon is basically like the fucking people leader and fucking the people eater is what he is to fucking Immortan Joe in this film, it's kind of like Steve Bannon already had these fucking ideas. Trump was just kind of just was like the perfect avatar. It's not like Donald Trump said, you know what, I'm going to create this MAGA movement with QAnon as my fucking like propaganda arm and all this and Fox News as my propaganda arm. And I'm going to gather all. He didn't have that master plan. This is something that kind of happened organically. And Steve Bannon was like, yeah, we can fucking do this. We can use this guy. He's perfect. So it's not necessarily like linear. And then so when you think of the backstories of these characters, that we don't even know about. It's like Immortan Joe was probably he was probably someone who fucking suffered during the end times, the collapse or whatever, and fucking and basically in his own mind had to become a tyrant. Maybe he started out like Darth Vader, thinking that he was gonna fucking like only he would bring peace to the fucking galaxy through fucking strength. You know what I mean? Like, did Hitler start by saying like, I'm gonna fucking be the monster of the 20th century, or am I fucking a hero to the German people? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, definitely.
And look at fucking Dementus. Like in this film, Dementus carries this teddy bear.
Well, with Dementus, there's more of an implied backstory. There are hints, and I'm glad that they don't go into great detail about it because it leaves him a great mystery. It's he's a villain, he's horrible, but there's a story there. There's a family. There's a wife. It's almost as if it's the outlaw Josie Wales in a sense. Something horrible happened to him, and his life became about seeking vengeance. But was it? I mean, did he use his power? It's the old story in heroic folklore. Do you use your powers for good or for evil? And this is a man who goes off the deep end, loses his humanity, and becomes a tyrant. Mm-hmm. And I think it's beautifully realized by Chris Hemsworth. I mean,
yeah,
that it's weird when he first turns to the camera and I saw that nose. I instantly thought of Anthony Quinn in Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
There was that moment, and then there was parts of me were like, well, is this racism? Is this, I don't know. I don't know what that exactly is, except to make him to make him
It's different,
uglier and make him, which is in itself a certain level of racism as well, there, or culturalism, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, because you can't. Hemsworth is so good looking a guy that it's almost a hard sell, but it might have been better to make him that good looking and as evil as he is in this film. I don't know. I mean, that's a stylistic choice.
It's interesting because it's like, I think just me,
Mm-hmm.
I look at Hemsworth as he looks normally, and then the way he looks and the way when you first open it on him and he has, he's wearing white,
Mm-hmm.
he looks like someone that you want to take more seriously, because he looks aged, but having the nose, the fake nose, he looks older. He looks, young Hemsworth looks heroic. He looks like, the stereotype of like this jock, the fucking good looking, arrogant, fucking, probably fun loving, fucking, all that handsome guy with the dating the cheerleader, blah, blah, blah. But do you necessarily take him seriously? You probably think, oh, he's probably cocky as hell. He thinks he's the shit. All he had to do in his life was rely on his good looks and his like physical prowess. You kind of think like, okay, yeah, he's like, maybe he'll become a firefighter or something, and he'll be a hero like then, and it'll all work out, blah blah. And he'll grow a mustache. But like, okay, but this way he looks. There's something. It's not respectability, but there's a gravitas that he has here with that nose. There's something that it's like, I take this person more seriously. It's there's something about it that lends itself to kind of more of a presence.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't think that they were trying to make any kind of like racist attacks on Jews or anything like that with the nose thing,
or Arabs for that matter, though. But I mean,
a
lot of times,
whatever,
it's unintentional. It's unintentional, but it's there. I can't help but wonder. Sorry.
No, but I just think that this is one of those, like, it's just a different character, and I think he was able to. He really leans into this like certain kind of Australian accent, and the fact that you can see this struggle between warlords, the politics of it, but at the same time, he's having a hard time keeping his own gangs like in check. His gangs are rebelling against him. You have this economic, like, relationship between Gastown, which we know what that means, Gastown, the bullet farm, because fucking munitions are so important, because it's, it's another form of, that's literal fucking firepower. And the Citadel controlling water. And in all of this, it's like these pockets of people, and Furiosa trying to make her way back fucking home. It's got all the hallmarks of, like, it's in that sense, it's fucking Odysseus. It's, it's the Odyssey trying to make it back home. And then eventually we learn, like, okay, well, that was that,
Yeah.
You passed fucking the green place. It's back there. So watching the film and then obsessing about fucking about the film and wanting to go back and watch it, and then fucking watching Fury Road, and then watching just car chases and watching everything I could about fucking. And I'm not a car person. That's not one of my like interests. I'm not really. One time I as a side job, I started to apprentice with this electrician years and years ago. And this guy's like, do you, he's like interviewing me basically. He's like, I'm going to like help him out. because he was injured, so he needed like a another set of hands.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Are you mechanically inclined?" And I gave the worst fucking possible answer that I could give. Not on purpose. I just did. I guess I just was like, I'm going to be honest with this person, which is a bad idea always. So I was like, there are people who go to the backyard and try to build a rocket. I'm someone who goes to the backyard and thinks about people who go to the backyard to build a rocket.
Jesus Christ.
And I mean, I'm more conceptual than fucking like, I'm not a gear person. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there, you know, I like to make collages. I can do that. I can string a guitar. I can do that. I can tie my shoes. There's that. But this makes me like want to be like a car person.
Yeah. I would love to
It's
work
weird.
I would love to work on a truck. My grandfather had an old I think it was a Ford pickup. It looked like the Sanford and Son truck, but it was gray. And I remember just sitting in that thing when I was a kid and shifting the gears and playing with the pedals. And I really hate that I don't know where that truck is now, or that it's gone. I wish I could have it, because at this age, I don't know if I would be capable of refurbishing it. I certainly don't have the skills, but people do it.
Just as a hobby, just as a thing, you know what I mean? One time I made Leslie a ring out of, we went somewhere, and I brought back some wood, some old dried wood that was at where we stayed. It was like branches, and I made her a ring. And obviously, I don't have like all these fucking crazy like tools or whatever. I just have in the garage I have a saw, and I have I have a drill and shit like that. And so and it was like, to me, because I'm a creative person, so I like that more than actually like the mechanics of stuff. But it's like the idea of like having a certain level of mechanical like prowess or acumen or whatever, so that from then, in the kind of Burning Man sense, now you can do something with that that isn't just like functional. That's now an expression. I took a trip. We were talking about Greyhounds before, not the dog, but the fucking bus.
The Nightmare?
Before we started, yeah, the Nightmare bus. Before we started recording, and one year I took a Greyhound from downtown LA to fucking downtown Manhattan, which I'll never do again. But it was cool. And at one point along that fucking treacherous fucking journey,
Your Fury
we were
Road?
stopped in, yeah, we were stopped in Grand Junction, Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
to like clean out the fucking bus, clean out the bus with quotes, and to refuel and all that bullshit. And so we're there for like, I don't know, 2 hours or something. And all of a sudden, you just hear like boom, 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 and like it just started to like fill it felt like we were in a valley. I don't know about Grand Junction, Colorado, but it felt like this thunderous, rumbling, roaring thing. And it was fucking all these bikers were going through. and it was like hundreds of fucking bikers. It was like some kind of run that they were doing.
That shit's scary.
It was fucking crazy, but it was like, I mean, it's also annoying, but it's like there's something about it. First of all, when you see these people like with these crazy like big cars and stuff on the freeway, and it's like these are the comments when it's like if there's a female in the car with you, they go like, oh, he has a little dick. You know what I mean? Like, you can sense the overcompensation is palpable. But in terms of like this biker fucking horde, it was like hundreds of fucking bikers of all sizes, of all different kinds of fucking bikes, the gooseneck looking fucking handlebars, fucking, and I don't know if they were like part of some outlaw club or what the fuck, because I didn't really like look at their vests and all the patches and all that stuff. It was just kind of like this mass of fucking bikers going through this street right next to the fucking Greyhound station, and they're there with their fucking chicks, or as they call them, their fucking bitches on the back of their bikes, their fucking hogs and all that shit, and whatever different names they have for their bikes. And there was something about it that was just kind of like, yeah, it was scary, but it was also like, fuck, like, what does that feel like to be in that like swarm, in that fucking horde going through places, and the reverberation of the engines, the fucking, you know, the exhaust pipe fucking like making that noise. And what is that? It's kind of like in the past we've talked about at night, sometimes I can hear these hot rod cars doing those fucking donuts. And I talk about how like, I don't want it near me. And in that asshole kind of sense, it's like, as long as it's over there and I can't see it, there's a part of me that wants it to be more fucking crazy, because for whatever reason, it's just kind of like, I get, you know, it's why you watch action movies, right? It's why you go to fucking Free Road and you get that adrenaline. And, you know, when Furiosa's in that fucking, once she gets to the point where she gets the war rig, she graduates to that point, and you're like, oh, this is fucking bad. This is fucking cool. It's like being a kid coming out of a fucking karate movie or kung fu movie, and you come out throwing kicks and doing all this bullshit. You know, you watch wrestling and you climb the fucking fence and you jump off and fucking like hit your friend. You know what I mean? And like, it's so theatrical.
I know exactly what you're talking about. You don't know how many times I've been and I drive a manual transmission. So there's nothing better than downshifting. Like in a movie where I need more power. Boom, hit this, boom, kick it back up, and then hearing that engine roar, and then just, you know, and it's a Honda Civic. It's not a killer machine, but the sensibility is there. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Movies have that power.
Yeah.
Movies have that power to kick you into to kickstart your imagination and make you believe in hero worship, I guess is the best way to describe it, is that you see all that shit on screen, and you want to be hanging off those poles. You want to be jumping from one end of the rig to the other. You know, just seeing them hanging underneath the rig and fixing shit. You're just sitting there like, that is the most moronic shit I've ever seen. God, I wish I could do it. Fuck, that's crazy. You know what I mean?
Because it means like, it's like this person can really interact with their environment in a way that like they're capable. They have the can do. You know what I mean? Like, if something comes up, they can fucking do it. They can handle it. It's like, this film opens up fucking strong right away. Furiosa's mom she gets very little screen time, but that character is a bad motherfucker.
Oh yeah.
That character's bad. Like, she's on a horse, and also this is hitting all these cultural American things. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
she's on a horse. Her fucking child has been kidnapped. She's on a horse, fucking chasing these fucking motorcycles. Fucking jumps off the horse, whatever. Fucking now with a fucking rifle, shoots fucking someone down. Goes, gets on the fucking motorcycle, chasing. Then next thing you know, fucking her thing is disabled, but she finds the other motorcycle. She fucking, like, quick as fuck, switches out the fucking tires, the wheel, gets on
And the
that.
gas tank, yeah.
Yeah, the gas tank. It's just fucking like, God damn, I don't even know where my sock is, you know? I'm still looking for that other sock in the fucking dryer, you know? Like,
And then she does the traditional thing where she strips the body and puts the fucking outfit on, and now she's going undercover. It's insane. Yeah, it's all this shit where it's like I couldn't do that. How the fuck could I do that? She's a fucking badass, and she's raising a badass kid who won't speak. That kid knows. There's everything about this film that I love. It's so on point with the world that it's creating and the people within it. And there's a part of me that's like, oh fuck. When I see normal movies and I see movies set in today, and I think, oh, this is bullshit. This character, that, and then sometimes you think of the women and you're like, oh Jesus Christ, this Charlie's Angels feminist bullshit. But in Furiosa, the world itself is so fucking tough and mean and intimidating that you can imagine everything that's done in this film is possible, because how the fuck else would you survive it? You know? The people in this film are that tough.
And the characters and the performances, they fill that role.
Absolutely, yeah.
It is believable because you get a sense that they are these, because you see them doing things. It's more than just, a lot of times in films, you get the idea that your mentality or your attitude is what's going to fucking, that's what gets you, that's what drives the character to be able to accomplish whatever they accomplish. Is like, the kind of thing of like, as long as you have enough heart, or as long as you have enough confidence, or whatever, you can keep getting up. And here in films like this, and particularly this film, because this is what we're really talking around, basically, is it's not fucking your I mean, obviously your attitude is like, well, if you give up, you give up. But it's kind of like, it's not even an option at this point. It's like, the end of the world is every day. And the end of the world already fucking happened like years ago. Like, now what? And it's kind of like, these people are doing things because they have to do them all the fucking time. There's no fucking rest. There's only like, I've been through this. This is just fucking like, okay, yeah, I can tie my shoe. Well, okay, I can fucking change this fucking whatever the fuck out on this big rig. So in the moment, there's a character named Praetorian Jack, who, super likable character, very interesting, has parallels to the Mad Max character, the shoulder pad, mysterious, fucking cool, capable, develops this bond. First starts off as just, okay, you work for me, basically. Then realizes that Furiosa at one point is female. Then they have their brief conflict. Then he's like, I'm going to take you under my wing. Then it's like she reveals that I want to go to this place. He's like, I'm going to help you fucking... First it's like, I'll set you up so you can go. She basically saves his life. They have this kind of like this bond, kind of like the early sense of, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a romance. It's just kind of like this human connection, and they're beat down, they're captured. Their fucking attitude is not going to fucking save them. They're standing there, barely standing up. All they can really do in that moment is fucking touch forehead to forehead, face to face, and just kind of tired. You can just see how tired they are, exhausted and beat the fuck down. And one of them, at least one of them, is gonna die. And it's like, okay, now what? And then, in a world that everything is like, you talked about your car as a manual transmission. Manual, meaning that you use your hand. Everything is fucking by hand in this world. Everything is, how can you manipulate? Manual, manipulate. How can you use your hand in the world? Whether it's the turning of the gear, the squeezing of a trigger, the slitting of someone's throat, the planting of a seed, whatever it is. And in that world, for this main character, in order in this moment to escape, already has an injured hand where he had started to draw a map on how to get back to her fucking homeland, cuts off her own fucking hand. That's
like an animal.
There's a lot there.
Yeah. It's survival.
Cuts off her own fucking hand to survive. Yeah. And you need your hands to survive. But it's like, there's a character, the history man that I mentioned earlier. He has all this fucking like writing tattooed on his body, all over his body, and on his clothes. And he starts to tell her that he can teach her history, and make yourself useful. You have to figure it out. She has other plans. This movie, there's a lot there. There's a lot of symbolism. You can take it as deeply as you want, or you can take it as superficially as you want and just watch the fucking chase. It's this juxtaposition, what we talked about, between the beauty and ugliness. At one point, there's this guy who's like in the watchtower. He's doing this painting of this. It's a John William Waterhouse painting called Hylas and the Nymphs. It's like this, I guess, like neo-romantic, whatever it's called, painting. And then you have like the beauty of some of the women going into like the wives, like going into like the Fury Road thing, is like these women are kept in a gilded cage, basically, because their little room, their little area where they live is beautiful, but they're slaves, basically.
Their property.
They're slaves, and they're breeders for Immortan Joe. But also to see like the beauty of the physical beauty of Furiosa's mother, but then paired with the fucking brutality and the technique, the marksmanship, all this shit that she can do, which of course pisses off fucking right wingers and fucking incels, because they were pissed off from fucking
Fury Road, yeah.
From Fury Road, and we did that. Mm-hmm. We did our Mad Max fucking episode, which was episode 128 in the fucking archives. We did that in 2017. But the nobility of a Praetorian Jack, and I think Anya Taylor-Joy, I like her more than Charlize. I like her more. Mm-hmm. I think, and I like Charlize in this film. I think she's a good actor in general. But just it's so much more amped up in terms of like the vulnerability, the strength, the anger, the bitterness, the softness, the determination, all of these things that you can see on her. And whatever you can't see on her, you project onto her. You know what I mean? And yeah, this one's, of the series, I agree. I mean, I think they're all interesting and they're all cool. But this is definitely one that's just kept me. I haven't been able to stop thinking about this movie.
Yeah, neither have I.
And then the fact, as I said in the beginning, the fact that George Miller is fucking his age and he's still like able to do something like this on this scale. And we were talking about that years ago when he did the other one.
Yeah. And he was 10 years younger then. Wow. And he was old
and
then.
He wants to,
yeah.
And he wants to do, he has some other shit in his pocket. He wants to do a Mad Max side thing, The Wasteland. And it's just, and you can tell that it's not just a money grab. This is just, there's just more stuff just coming out of him.
These films are too hard to make for it to be a money grab. These films are just too taxing. I imagine that a film like this takes years off your life, even with the understanding that he's 80. I can't imagine that a film like this doesn't just wear your fucking. It just wears you down physically, mentally, dealing with Warner Brothers, dealing with the studio system, getting the money necessary to make it, and then the constant pressure of not having somebody die during the making of these films. I don't know how you would do it. He is one of the great directors for this series of films. He's one of the great directors in cinema based on the series of films that we've been watching over almost 50 years. I think it's an amazing accomplishment, and I would love to see that last film made. I would love to see Wasteland get made, but I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, there's a shot, this Easter egg shot of fucking Mad Max, like, on a cliff overlooking the action.
Events. Yeah, the action. Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, wow, like it and I don't really speak in these terms, you know what I mean? And I don't really like get like all like, oh my God, about fucking really anything. I'm pretty subdued, you know? I'm like Donald Rumsfeld. It's like, cool, measured.
It's all the unknown knowns with you. So yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. And so it's, but to give into it and to see that Easter egg and be like, fuck, like this is like, of course they're gonna meet pretty soon because she's fucking like, we're leading up to that point where it's, Fox on the run, yeah. So go see the fucking movie.
Don't miss it. It's probably one of the last great movie watching experiences you'll have. We've talked about that, you and I, on mic and off mic. Theater movie watching is no longer what it once was. This is the last grasp of that, because when you're watching this film, 3/4 of the audience is so consumed by what they're watching on that screen that they're going to forget about their phones. They're going to forget about all the other bullshit that is going on in their lives, and they're going to be focused almost exclusively on that screen. Yeah, they're going to be into it. Whether they're into it or not, they're going to be into that. They'll accept this world. And this is cinema. This is not some fucking rehashing of whatever. This is not, it is part of a larger saga, and it is subtitled, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. That's a marketing thing, though, but, I know what you're saying. But sure. It's its own thing. It's its own beast. The original, yeah, but it still is, as you said earlier, of that world. Mm-hmm. And it does parallel, obviously, Mad Max. And in many ways, I think her character is more interesting than Mad Max. Even though, obviously, for different reasons, his is interesting, and especially as it evolves. I'd agree, yeah. And the fact that I think, like,
Mad Max becomes less charismatic as it goes on because he's losing it more and more. By the time you get to Tom Hardy, it's kind of like it suited it that fucking at least in the timeline of my memory is that fucking Mel Gibson fucking lost it in real life, and then fucking in order for the character to start hallucinating in film, you know, fucking put it in the Rose Garden, you know.
I'm still a Mel Gibson fan. I don't give a shit how fucked up he is or how crazy. I love the fact that he is. It's a shit show, and I love it.
You know, well, that's Hollywood, and that's fucking Hollywood.
Yes, it is. Who do we want to thank this week?
BuyMeACoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. Tommy Tickle. Thank you, sir. Thank all of you. Keep tuning in. Keep showing up. We will too. Rev your fucking engines, assholes.
We've got a lot more story to tell. Please join us for it. Thank you very much.